Okay, today we are only reviewing simplifying fractions. The reason we're having to review simplifying fractions is because from this day forward, I expect all fractions to be written as an answer in simplified format. So we're going to review it today. It's also important because where we're going requires you to know the simplified fractions for equivalent, decimals, percents, and fractions, because that's what we're getting into soon. There are equivalent forms of all three of those. You probably know the most common. You're going to get a little cheat sheet that gives you the most common that you can keep in your journal so that you can reference that. But you also have to know how to convert between decimals, fractions, and percents. So today we're just going to practice simplifying. We're going to talk about GCF. Does anybody remember what GCF stands for? It's greatest
common factor.
Yes, greatest common factor. So we're going to be talking a lot about GCF today. That's what we're going to use to help us figure out what the best number is to reduce by. Okay, so let's look at the first example. It's really simple, and I know that you guys know it just off the top of your head, but we're going to practice these steps because I want you to choose a method that you like out of the two that we're going to learn today, and you're going to get really good at it. And that's a method that you're going to use every single time you're trying to simplify fractions. So 6/12 is the first fraction we're going to look at. I have a T-chart, and I also have called it in the past the horseshoe method, and you'll see why in a second. So in a T-chart, we're going to list all of our factors, starting with 1. Oh, let me choose a different color. Okay, I've got 1, 6, 2, and 3. So those are the factors that are going to make up 6. The reason I call it horseshoe method is because if I were to keep listing my factors down the left side, my next factor would be 3, and then it would loop back around at 2. So I just do it like this. Once I get to the next factor that loops around on this side, it makes like a little horseshoe shape. So I call that the horseshoe method. You can call it the T-chart method. It's really the same thing. I'm going to do the same thing for 12. So I'm going to list all of my factors for 12. 1 and 12, 2 and 6. What am I missing? 3 and 4. So it wouldn't make sense to list 4 down here and then 3 over here. That's why it is also known as the horseshoe method, because it loops back around. Okay, there's another method that you can do, and I used to call this the rainbow method. You'll see why in a second, but it can also be called the list method. So I'm going to just list them. 1, 2, 3, 6. I called it rainbow because I would match up my factors. So 6 and 1, 2 and 3. Makes like a little rainbow. Nope. Then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 12. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to circle where I see the greatest common factor in both methods. So the one I just did, I have a 6 here and a 6 here. The one over here, I find my greatest common factor. It is what it sounds like. It's the greatest factor that they have in common. So that's what you're looking for. So my GCF of 6 and 12 is 6. That is what I'm going to reduce by. I'm going to divide my numerator 6 by 6. So my simplified numerator is going to be 1. And then 12 by 6 is 2. So my simplified fraction all in all is 1/2. So I know that was a lot of work for one that we just know. Like we all know 6/12 is equivalent to 1/2. But as we get to bigger fractions that we don't just know, I want y'all to feel really good about one of those two methods. So here's another one that's pretty easy. We have 9 and 12. So if I were to list out all of my factors, 1 and 9 make 9. 3 and 3 make 9. 12 and 1, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. If you don't like the T-chart method and you'd rather just list them all out, I nowadays all of a sudden just started listing them in the last couple years. I always liked the T-chart for a long time. Recently I've been listing. So you're going to choose what you like best. So I'm going to list them here. All of my factors for 9, all of my factors for 12, and I'm going to circle the greatest common factor that 9 and 12 share, which is 3. So that means that I'm going to reduce 9/12 by dividing the numerator and denominator both by 3. So my reduced fraction is 3/4. Okay, here's one that we might not know off the top of our head. So as your fractions and your numbers get a little bit bigger, they're not as common, that's when you need to have a method that you like. Okay, I'm going to start with the list method this time. And I'm just going to list all of my factors that make 35. So 1 does 3.
No.
4.
No.
5 does 7. And 35. For 85, my factors are going to be 1, 5, 17, and 85.
Where does 17 match up with the 5? Oh.
For the T-chart method, you're going to have the exact same numbers. You're just showing like what's multiplied together to equal 35. So I would have 1 and 35, 5 and 7. For 85, I would have 1 and 85, and then I would have 5 and 8. 17. Okay, so out of those, which factor is the greatest that they have in common? Exactly. Okay, so I'm going to write my GCF in my box. That is what I'm going to divide both of those by. So my reduced fraction is 7/17. You can. Yep. You can do the next one by yourselves. Choose a method, whether it's listing or the T-chart method, and then we'll check it.
1, 6.
Don't worry about the lines right now. I want you working on that last one.
Wait, so what goes on the left and what goes on the right, like on the teacher?
Can't figure out what the second number
On the you're just listing your factors that you multiply together to equal the top number. Not really.
I can't figure
I just like to go least to greatest. So I always start with 1 on the left and then multiply it by itself.
Is that it?
Nope.
How many iterations can you do for 50?
There is 4.
There are 8 factors in 54. 8 total factors.
But like, it's
But-
one. It's one.
But 4, if you're doing the T-chart, there are 4 rows, 4 combinations. I'm going to go over it in just a minute. You're missing one somewhere.
Every single number.
I got 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, 7 is 56.
Okay, there they are.
Oh, it's 18.
Oh, sorry. I got 18 is one. I was confused.
18 and what? 18 and 2.
Oh, I didn't add the 27 and 25. Sorry.
18 and 3. Oh, it's 6 and 6?
Oh, no. It's 1 9.
So if you were missing any, make sure you get in whatever you were missing.
Oh, I hit them all. I accidentally counted the top, though. I was looking at the wrong one.
My greatest common factor for this one should be 6. So when you divide, it reduces to 1/9.
1 9. Do I have to list? Do I have to do both?
You pick. You chose. You picked on that.
And now we put them all in these 4 lines right there?
No, I'm going to have you write something in a minute.
Oh, well. I thought that was per se and I was right.
All right, 1, 2, 3. Eyes on me.
1, 2, eyes on you.
All right, in these lines, there's not really anything that is supposed to go there, but I would like to add something there. A little note that if the numerator is 1 less than the denominator, it is in simplest form. Okay, so what that means is if you have, I'm just going to write an example right here. Like this, 9 tenths.
It is reduced.
When the numerator is only 1 less than the denominator, it's already as low as it'll go. It cannot simplify down any further.
What if we try to
Okay.
split it down?
All right, I want you guys to do 1, 2, and 3 on the next page together. It shouldn't take very long, and then we will check it. So I'm going to give you about 60 seconds with your table, and then we'll check.
Oh my god. What do we do when we're done? We need a red pen. Can I be the spokesperson? Great.
30 seconds. Anybody need more time?
No.
Okay. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. All right. There they are. Self-check them. Make sure you got them right. Correct them if you need to. Please turn to the next page, which looks like this.
Wait, I know my word. This one, I didn't. Why?
Love it, love it, love it. All right.
I did not know that we were.
Are
we doing this?
Tim, you may have to come back to it in a minute. All right. We, again, like I said at the beginning of class today, we are going to be talking about equivalent decimals, percents, and fractions, which means we need to be pretty solid in decimals and fractions before we introduce percents and start having those come in with decimals and fractions. So we're going to do a quick review today where we practice naming the decimal and the fraction, and then we also simplify the fraction. So let's look at that first example. That first example is showing us as a decimal how much? How do I say that? Not 0.40, but 40 hundredths. It is 40 hundredths. My fraction is 40 over 100, but simplified starting today and moving forward every other day after today. Yep, it can be simplified even further. So 4/10 is simplified, but if I'm using my greatest common factor to reduce it, it should reduce even further to 2/5.
If the bottom is an odd number, like on a fraction, can it be simplified?
It depends if it can be divisible by the same thing that the top number can be divisible by.
I don't know what you
All right,
Amelia.
I need everybody to stop their side conversations in 3, 2, and 1. All right, on this, because I wanted to make sure everybody is clear on how to get 2/5, if you just list out your factors.
Would you do 4 or 40 or just?
Oops, I forgot one. Hold on. I left out 5. 8, 10,
Writing this? 5. Yes.
20, and 40.
Supposed to be writing this?
Of those factors, if I write, you write usually. That's the rule. If I write, you write. Of those factors, which one would be the greatest that can go into 100? 40 can evenly go into 100? 20. So that's what I simplified by. When you're looking here, 40 divided by 20 is 2. 100 divided by 20 is 5. That's how I did it. Okay, so if you don't know 2/5 yet, then list them out. Make a T-chart. Whatever you need to do, that's what you need to do to make sure that you simplify it all the way down. All right, the next one. Number 2. What's my decimal?
0.810.
Which is what? 800.
0.8
Not 0.8. It's just 800.
I know it is. The last one is.
I got
The fraction.
at least.
Shh, guys, please don't blurt out. I'm trying to record our lesson for people who aren't here. My fraction is 8 over 100. If I were to list out my factors for 8,
Simplified.
which one of these numbers can also evenly divide into 100? The greatest one would be 4, because I know that 100 divided by 4 is 25. So 8 divided by 4 is 2. 100 divided by 4 is 25. So 2 25ths.
Can it be simplified even further?
That's as far as it'll go. Number 3, my decimal is 75 hundredths. We know that would be 75 over 100, and we all should know that it simplifies to 3/4.
That one was easy peasy.
This next one is 33 hundredths, which is 33 over 100, which is technically 1/3. So whenever we have 33, that's one that you also should know. It's kind of like the 0.6 that repeats over and over, and it's like 2/3. So 1/3 is technically that.
Everything 3 is kind of pi.
It's repeating. And so if you were to keep on repeating, eventually, like, you'd have to round it off at some point. Okay.
If there's 3 of those, it makes any number.
Right.
So 33 and 1/2 or 100.
So we say that like 33% is like a third.
Yeah.
It's because it's a repeating decimal.
33.3 is
If it cut off, it was a terminating, then yeah, it wouldn't be. But because it's repeating, we consider it a third. Okay. On this one, I'm going to give you a decimal, a fraction, or a reduced fraction, and you are going to shade it and fill in the other blanks. For the first one. Oh, wait, hold on. Wrong spot.
0007.
You're going to shade in to represent that decimal, write the fraction, and then write the simplified fraction.
Okay.
Big 5X.
Okay, you are shading to represent the given number. Then you will write the equivalent decimal, fraction, or simplified fraction.
Oh, so you don't have to do the fraction and the simplified?
Well, you're given one, you have to fill in the other two. Everything needs to be completed just like how we did in our examples together. Okay, here's what they look like when you are done. On the first one, you should have 60 little squares shaded. It's 60 over 100, and the simplified fraction is 3/5. What did I reduce by? 20. I divided by 20. On number 6, I gave you 15 over 100. The decimal is 1500ths. The reduced simplified fraction is 3/20ths because I reduced by 5. And I had 15 boxes shaded. Number 7, I gave you what did I give you? 4/5? Yeah. Okay, so you had 4/5. You had to make it out of 100. So that's writing an equivalent fraction. So 5 times 20 is 100. 4 times 20 is 80. Then you get your decimal. Then you shade 80 boxes. The last one, you're going to shade 92 boxes. It's 9200ths as a decimal. And on that, the greatest common factor is 4. So you would divide 92 and 100 both by 4. And you get 23/25ths. Are there any questions? Okay.